She's an internationally celebrated creative artist, photographer, filmmaker, and communication specialist from Nigeria. She has drafted, applied various creative strategies, and led initiatives for community building and value creation. She's multifaceted with relevant experience as an entrepreneur, working with multiple industries in the private sector before delving into the public service. She's a bridge builder between these sectors and engages in policy formulation and development initiatives that support job creation, youth and women empowerment across Africa. Speaking at over 100 sponsored events and conferences, she has also supported the training of over 40,000 young people over the years. She has developed various skills, including public speaking, strategy development, leadership, political and corporate communications. Most recently, she served as a special advisor to the Nigerian Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Prior to this, she was the Senior Special Assistant on New Media to the Governor of Kebbi State, where she coordinated statewide publicity and reputation management for the government. The popularity of her work in communicating policies to the grassroots led her to run for a seat at the Argungu-Augi Federal Constituency House of Representatives primaries in Kebbi State, making her the first female to ever do so. She has many caps. She's a mother, wife, and daughter to Justice Amina Adamu Augi. Join us in welcoming Aisha Augi to the studio today.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
Amina.
for taking out time to be with us today.
Thank you.
For a busy schedule.
Thank you so
Welcome back from the political era. Okay, so your career has been a very interesting one, from being a creative artist
Yes.
to being a politician. Tell us all about this. How did this happen from the arts, creative arts and culture environment to politics to policy to advocacy? Tell us about it.
Well, a very interesting one. I grew up as a very curious child, and I always liked to know how things were made. Photography was one of those things that caught my mind, where I'm like, how do they get something I see on a piece of paper? So in asking those questions, it's like you get more and more into it. But it's something I've always loved since I was a child, and my father supported me early on. Just to, as a medium of expression, he gave me a film camera. I would use it, and he would help me print whenever he traveled. Then early days in Sokoto, I had a year where I had like a whole suitcase of images. Wow. And in Kaduna also. So that's how it all started. I studied mass communication, and I did a course in photojournalism as part of it. I think I was the only one who took that course. Or maybe
what university?
In ABU Zaria,
okay.
Ahmadu Bello University Zaria,
okay.
The best university in Nigeria.
Sure.
I went to ABU, and I had photojournalism course, and then that led to more questions, that led to a whole different career, because when you're done with school, it wasn't like now that you had private sector jobs waiting. Most people were always waiting for public sector because we really didn't have a diversified economy where other jobs were as good, because we're talking early years, 2001, 2002. So I ended up doing other jobs, marketing, customer service, human resources in the private sector, the insurance and pension. And I did really well. I was head of HR when I left to become a photographer full-time. And what led to that was having children, having a family. I wanted to make time for my family, and I said, okay, this allows me to choose my hours. And everyone thought I was mad, but then it happened. And it went on to telling stories, especially because there was a huge gap in northern Nigeria, even with us as women. I think one of the first times it really hit me was I went to a wedding, and there was no documentation of the traditional side, because the men weren't allowed to go into those places, and we didn't have female photographers. So it was a huge gap at the time, and I felt, I could provide a solution by documenting our stories, especially the women of northern Nigeria, the weddings. And then traditional weddings, I think back in the day, we didn't take it seriously as events. But I found those to be the most intriguing when it came to events. And that led to other things. Next thing, I'm doing development photography, communications, asking questions, you know, shouldn't the government be doing this? Who's in charge? You know, you're working with all these different development firms, and that's led me back to Kebbi, and everything changed from there.
And you went straight into politics?
It wasn't straight into, so it was more from the perspective of how do I support the people and the government to understand each other and to communicate. You have maybe, for example, a governor who's been lied to by some of his trusted people to say, we've done this work. You don't have time all the time to go to these places. And in the past, we didn't have photography where you could document and showcase. It's more like whatever document is brought to you, you know,
you just accept
you
it.
accept it, or if you have your people to go and check. But if you have people colluding with each other, how do you know the truth? How do you know the reality? You can't go to every project. So that's, for me, photography helped bridge that gap where the citizens can say, this is what we have in our community, this is the quality, do you understand? And this is what we see. And the government can say, this is what I have, and find a way to bridge the gap. If this is needed, you have a lot of projects that are done without data. That used to happen a lot in the past.
So has it been easy being a female northern politician?
Well, it's for me, I feel being a female hasn't stopped me. That has really propelled me, because when it started with photography, that was why if people saw my work and they said it was Aisha, it's like, oh, a girl? So it takes more precedent. I had colleagues that did way better work than I did, but they didn't get the attention. But because it was like an anomaly. So it's the same kind of situation with politics. You do have the people that will tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't. You shouldn't. First off, the reputation of who a female politician was not the best. You have men that feel women shouldn't be mingling or shouldn't be in any spaces where decisions are being made, you know, and it's part of the culture. It's not necessarily like them thinking, I want to put this person down. But it's a lot of it has to also come from a level of protection where it's like women should not be here because they're meant to be protected. But when it comes to politics and governance, I'm very much of the opinion that you cannot think for the women. You cannot think for the children. The women should represent their voices. We should be able to be in rooms where decisions are being made and say, this is our problem. We want our solutions. You know, and we're 50-50 Nigeria, 49.5%, I think, are women. So we should have a say. So that's really one of the propelling factors.
Okay. Many would ask, you're the daughter of Justice Amina Adamu Augidi,
a very proud one.
Yes. How did you escape towing the line of being
a lawyer? Oddly enough, yesterday was her last day. So last day in court, because they're going to go on break and then her retirement comes through. So she's not going to be sitting again, and I'm super proud and honored to be her daughter. Of course, I wanted to study law, early stages. In fact, I actually commenced, you know, but because of other factors and certain reasons, actually it had a lot to do with cultism. I had been attacked in 1 or 2 times due to some cult men, and my dad felt this was not the right place, so I was moved to Zaria. And so I'll just say you look back in retrospect and see how God guides your steps. I believe in God. I'm not super religious, but I'm very spiritual, and I genuinely believe God has plans for us, and there are just certain steps you need to take. And I look back now and realize it was all written. I am where I am today because of the path I took, studying mass communication. So in the beginning, yes, she did have issues. She was a full career woman who felt, you know, I should have a proper career. Who wants to be a photographer? Do you understand? That was the thought process then. This is not a career. You want to run around carrying a camera, you know? And oddly enough, I had an interview with under 40 CEOs, and for the first time, I expressed how it made me feel at the time, because I just felt I needed the support, and I'm being told why I couldn't. And I just decided I would still go ahead, see what happens, you know. And today she's very proud of me. She's one of my #1 fans and supporters.
So am I.
Thank you,
So what
Anita.
motivates you generally?
I think looking back at life and all that I've been through, of course, having a strong, solid mom is super important. To see her never give up. We've been through so much as a family. My dad died in 2001, and she's basically been the matriarch of the family, but she never let go. She never gave up. My dad was a strong supporter of me and also had encouraging words early on, you know, and so I really feel I can't disappoint them.
Yeah.
So that's a strong motivating factor. My children are strong. I think it's all cliche stuff, but I really feel one of the reasons why I wake up every day and think I'm just gonna keep going. Sunrise and sunsets. I made an actual deliberate decision. Every time I see a sunrise and a sunset, I'm reminded nothing lasts forever. If anything bad is gonna happen to us today, it doesn't mean it's gonna be the same
Correct.
day tomorrow. And once you're able to sleep and wake up with that mindset, you don't really feel stressed. And I get to do the jobs that I love.
Right,
So
true.
that's a good motivation.
So around all this creative arts, photography, politics, advocacy, and all that, where do you really find peace? Where is your heart
To be honest,
at?
art. I love art. Like, art is my life. I love to paint. I love to create. I do mixed media. I love to make videos, tell stories. I don't get as much time as I would have wanted because of the kind of work that I've been doing in the past to express and showcase a lot of that. But right now, I am free to do that. I am currently the Creator General. Hear that name?
Yeah, oh,
Yes,
Creator
the world
General.
is going to know it. The
Okay, what
Creator
does it mean to
General.
be an advocate for creative and cultural?
The creative and cultural sector.
sector, yes.
Yes, so I became an advocate years ago because it supported me entrepreneurially, right? I was over 10 years as a full-time entrepreneur. I ran a studio, I did photography all over the place as a freelancer, and I didn't have the kind of support that I felt I could get. And especially with the kind of jobs that I've personally created, directly and indirectly, I know the industry is a huge industry that can create jobs for us, and we need them. Young people are very expressive. You can see today with TikToks, Instagram.
Yeah.
Back in the day, to do a skit, we know how much effort you needed to put to create a skit.
Yeah.
But now they have the avenue to express it. So how do we professionalize that sector to create more jobs? How do we document these young people? Because now I think 60% of
Yeah.
Nigerians are young or more, I'm not
60.
sure. 60%. So we have the human capital, and we are very creative people.
Yes, we
You
are.
know, so I really feel it's not just Nigeria, but it's for the whole of Africa. I'm off to Ghana on Sunday because of that. So,
Okay.
you know, we will continue being a voice for the sector, because if we had that kind of support early on, we would have done a lot more.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, I shall be talking more on where the Nigerian woman's position is presently. welcome back. We've been in the studio with Aisha Ogi, and she's been talking arts, politics, and female representation. Speaking about female representation, you're a female activist. You know, Nigerian women have been agitating for the 35% affirmation and all that. Do you think Nigeria is getting it right when it comes to female representation? You've worked in both states, federal government, and other private sectors. Do you think Nigeria as a country, we're getting it?
Genuinely, we are not. You know, I think we need to start looking at things from the perspective of the economy. Just the economy alone. I just left the Ministry of Finance like a month ago. So I finally kind of have an idea of how an economy is run. And we're really not tapping into the potential of women. It's not even about representation anymore. It's everything. You know, most women, if you look at social enterprises, it's mostly women. Why? Women think of solutions that are beyond just them and maybe a legacy that they're leaving for their family or the name. You know, we think bigger picture.
Yeah.
We've always been trained to take care of communities, to take care of our families. So that thought process transitions into wherever you see a woman in leadership positions. And we are not trying, we're not doing enough. You know, we do have some male allies, but there's still that perspective of, is it a competition? The women want to come and take over. A woman wants to come and give me orders. No. It's more like, how do we support you that are already running things to make things better for everybody, for us, for our children? You know, so we're not getting it right because we do not have the representation we need. You know, I can, for example, call out my state that recently just announced 30 special advisors, and there was only one female.
Wow.
Women Affairs. Where were all the women that supported during campaign? Do you understand? When it's time to campaign and be on the road, we are the first that they will pack in those buses.
But most will say they're looking for technocrats. I'm not saying we don't have female technocrats, but how do we break down that door?
Do you look for technocrats when you're appointing the men? That's the question. Let's make it the same. If you have men that are not technocrats, that are running things, then I don't see why a woman shouldn't be also. I'm not saying we should hire incompetent people, but I'm saying we do have spaces where incompetent people have been hired and they're male, right? So why not an incompetent woman too? That's the question. It's not about being equal right now. It's about representation. You need people in the room, and technocrats don't always know. I think for being in politics and governance, you have to understand both politics and be a technocrat, because you can't be a 100% technocrat and win in the political side, and you still need the political side to get things done.
Yeah.
You know, so we need a balance between the two when it comes to all humans, female, male. But what I'm saying is those excuses do not work, because at the end of the day, you do have men that don't fit into those roles, that are given positions or that are put to lead.
All right. You once said no one understands us more than we ourselves, so we must tell our stories our own way.
Yes.
Linking it to the question before this, how have you been able to tell the Nigerian story your own way? Yes, you've done a lot with photography, but you are an advocate and all that. What special thing have you done to tell the Nigerian woman's story? Okay,
so for me, that actually came from an interview. It was an international interview, and it was more from the perspective of how Africa is being shown to the world. You know, the Africa most of the world get to see is the dilapidated, poverty-stricken, mostly always about the sick child, malaria, HIV, you know, things like that. And I felt we don't have that level of representation of who we are as a people. You know, yes, those things happen, but we also have a lot of development that's going on right now that should be showcased. So that was where that quote came from.
Right.
And for me, it was like, I want to show things as they are. The beauty with which I see it. A poor community does not mean the people are not happy. I went to a community in Niger Republic. It's the cleanest village. It was in the Tillaberi region, and it was the cleanest village I had ever seen. And I was sent to document water, cholera, all these things. And this village was so beautiful, the way the community supported themselves, you know. And I just felt that story that they wanted didn't match up to the community that I went to experience. I would live there comfortably, but they don't have electricity. They barely had water, and that's why that NGO had done water for them. But I felt, can we showcase more hopeful and inspirational stories? So I tend to do that a lot with my work. You know, document people who are doing beautiful things in their communities, you know, people who are like collaborations. So I'll give an example. There are these Fulani women that I started following, especially with the attacks on the Fulani community. I felt, well, the entire Fulani community can't be called bandits. I had already started documenting even ahead of that because a lot of people asked if I was Fulani or not. And I found these stories. There's a community in Oyo where the Yorubas speak Fulani, the Fulani speak Yorubas, and they have a combined mission, which is still connected to the economy because they're buying the milk of these women. And now they've intermarried. Those are the kind of stories we need to tell. You have women building their own homes from the milk that they sold. So those are the kind of stories that I like to project and put out there. So personally, I made a decision that I was not going to join the whole world in this negative showcasing of who we are as women or as Africans or Nigerians. So that has been my personal contribution to that.
You're a very busy person, obviously. You travel a lot.
I do.
So how do you find time to bond? You know, you're no more full-time into photography. So where do you find time to relax and bond?
So I think
family?
the last COVID really, you know, made us all rethink our lives, right?
Yes.
But I've always been one who's very deliberate. Even with my kids, like I'm very, very deliberate. I make sure that at least we always have one activity or the other during the week. And I also have a cap. My maximum travel time is 10 days. Because that's how long it takes for you to catch malaria. Just in case, you know, if my kids get bitten today, I know in 10 days there's a possibility of a fever. So I always test them before I travel. Okay. So I'm very deliberate. But when it came to social, you know, I mean, it's been hard to connect. And social life really did suffer. And after post-COVID, I still did an MBA while working. Wow. So I had 0 weekends and 0 nights, but there's a time for everything. There are times that you have to shut down and focus to get things done. And you hold on to the closest people to you and try to ensure you make time for them and they make time for you. It's a two-way street. Yeah. So I'm really very much now about what makes me happy, but makes my direct family and friends also happy. So I do make time. I can shut down 6 hours and imagine I'm in a meeting with the president. No one can reach me if I was in a 6-hour meeting with the president because they would have my phones, right? Yeah. So I shut down and I give those 6 hours to either my family or friends, no disturbances, no calls, no answering. And life, the world doesn't end. Wow. Yeah. You just have to be deliberate.
What do you have? You have so much, just so much going for you. Yeah. Where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years?
I always find that question funny. But in the next 5, 10 years, I want to see the Center for Art and Creative Talent, the foundation that I've been running since 2012, hit most of Africa. I want to be able to say that I, myself, as Aisha, has supported millions of people to find themselves, to find what works for them. And they're happy doing the kind of jobs that they do, because that's the beauty of the arts and culture, creative and cultural sector. You don't feel like you're working, but you're also changing lives, you're creating narratives, you're supporting discourse, by using your art and culture.
Okay, this is the last question. You can't be caught without your fabulous boo-boos. What's the passion for boo-boos?
No, I've always loved boo-boos because they're easy. Growing up, I was a bit of a tomboy. So I was always in jeans and t-shirts. And it was just easy to just throw the boo-boos on. Okay. And I love that it's made out of cotton. I don't feel like I'm sweating. And to be honest, lately, like I said, I'm very deliberate. I had a lot of followers on social media. I had too much work, so I couldn't showcase my photography.
Okay.
And one time I posted a dress, and the lady called me and said she sold out. And for 2 years, she had these things in her store. I was like, wow, okay, so I can actually support businesses. So I do mostly made in Nigeria, but now I'm also doing made in Africa. This is, for example, Christy Brown from Ghana.
Okay.
My bag is the Shadu from Lagos.
Oh, wow.
You know, so I'm always, my earrings is Jumoke Lagos.
Okay.
My headscarf is Adire Teams. So almost everything I wear is in support of one entrepreneur or the other who's running a business. So it's not necessarily just about being a fashionista who loves boo-boos, but to also support a lot of entrepreneurs.
Forget multitasking. Find the beauty in doing one thing at a time. This is exactly what our guest has been doing with her time. Thank you very much for taking our time to be with us here today, Aisha. It's not the intelligent woman versus the ignorant woman, nor the white woman versus the black, the brown, and the red. It's not even the cause of women versus men. Neither is it the woman's strongest vindication for speaking out. The world needs to hear her voice. And Julia Copper, that was her quote. Thank you for tuning in to today's program. I remain your host, Amina Al-Hassan. Until next week when we bring you another interesting guest, stay safe and remain blessed.